when a narcissist was so preoccupied with their own feeling of invincibility that they walked straight into the hands of a federal agent. They were caught in the act. Unbeknownst to them, the mysterious figure they believed was an ally, a hacker for hire, was really an undercover agent waiting to strike. Despite the fact that money was exchanged, secrets were revealed, and the narcissist's attitude eventually led to their downfall. In a moment of reckoning, the truly best were caught red-handed, their empire of deception collapsing under the weight of their own obsession. They were caught red-handed. The federal government had played the most difficult game conceivable. In contrast, the narcissists were perfectly prepped. They couldn't take the notion of your renewed energy, calm, and capacity to go ahead without them. It tormented them, like an unsolved problem. It also wounded their ego, like a wound that refused to heal since you had become the one thing over which they had no control. This truth drove them to a frantic and increasing obsession. It seemed as if every move you made, every step you took that was beyond their grasp was an affront to their fragile sense of power. They needed to know what you were doing, who you were with, and, most crucially, whether you were developing effectively without them. It was as if a gradual poison had taken root in their brain, similar to paranoia. At first, they were able to convince themselves that it was just curiosity, a harmless yearning to be informed. However, the truth was much more frightening. They were coming apart. They were most frightened about losing control over how others saw you when you broke free and rose without their intervention. Their world started to disintegrate. They had created an illusion of strength, one in which they were constantly ahead and unstoppable. However, once you broke free, their world started to crumble. There was no longer any success with traditional methods like bogus tales, flying monkeys, or mutual relationships, which they had previously used as informants. You had closed and secured every door and window, despite the fact that their access had been denied. They ignored the ruling at that moment. They exceeded the boundaries of permissible conduct. They used technology, including malware, social engineering, and black market hackers, to steal your privacy. If they were unable to maintain track of you from the outside, they would devise a method to infiltrate the structure using throwaway devices, encrypted communications, and backdoor eavesdropping techniques. They were convinced that they were clever and that their tactics were too sophisticated to detect. Their desperation drove them to behave dangerously, despite their efforts to reclaim the control they had lost. These folks' arrogance caused them to feel that they were untouchable and could buy their way into your society without repercussions. They failed to see that the walls were closing in on them, that every digital trace they left behind, every illegal transaction they did, and every step they took was leading them right into a trap. In reality, what they believed was their master plan proved to be their worst mistake. They intended to impose influence over you. Instead, they unwittingly caused their own doom. The worst part was that the federal government was already keeping an eye on things. Their arrogance kept them from seeing that they were not the predators in this game. Instead, they were the prey. They were completely unaware of this for quite some time before contacting their alleged hacker for hire. Law enforcement had previously been watching the incident. There was nothing but a breadcrumb leading straight to their own doom. And every frantic step they took, every failed effort to reintegrate into your society was nothing more than that. During the hacking efforts, fraudulent transactions were identified. Cyberstalking was recorded, and the details were properly documented. They thought they were doing business in the shadows, but they had really been following the spotlight the whole time. Each tactic they devised, and every illegal instrument they used left a trail, a digital fingerprint that linked them straight to the crimes they imagined they could hide. They had been reckless as a consequence of their paranoia, and their recklessness had led them to be careless when they thought they had located a way back in. However, they committed their most serious misstep, a catastrophic miscalculation that would seal their demise. They turned to a hacker, an anonymous figure in the murky world of cybercrime, since they were so desperate that their fear overpowered them. They were under the notion that they were creating a direct link into your private, allowing them to regain control. However, they failed to notice that this hacker was not your typical dark operator. Rather, This hacker was an undercover agent waiting for them to take the bait. It was too basic. They were so eager, so sure of their own genius, that they never considered who they were really dealing with. It was too simple. They gave them the money, issued precise instructions, and said exactly what they wanted: access to your life, communications, and digital surroundings. There was no hesitation on their side. Every word they spoke, every demand they made, and every transaction they took part in was being recorded. At the same time, they were already losing. They were just oblivious of it, despite the fact that they had recently signed their own arrest warrant. They had imagined that they were the masterminds behind the plot, pulling the strings. The bet had been made, and the countdown had already begun. Eventually, the walls would close in. They would soon realize that they were not in power. They'd been played, and the worst part was that they had portrayed themselves. Soon, the walls would close in. After they transferred the money, the case against them was declared concluded. Every keystroke, whispered command, and arrogant demand became proof. It was undeniable and difficult to ignore. However, the federal government did not intend to jump in right away. It was not enough to just make an arrest. Rather, it was required to build an impenetrable case, one so exact that there was no space for excuses or opportunities to exploit vulnerabilities. It wasn't just that the trap had been set. It was coming closer, making one smart step at a time. The agents engaged in a long-term campaign to reinforce the narcissist's fantasies of control. They responded slightly more than was required to keep their attention, dangling the prospect of success in front of their own eyes. Because they were busy with their own domination fantasies, the narcissist had no suspicions. They assumed they were completing their business in solitude and moving silently. What they didn't realize was that the silence was the exact consequence of their walking directly into a cage, one that had been built just for them. The evidence was gathering behind the scenes. Each digital footprint was being tracked. Every transaction was scrutinized, and every contact was documented. Telephone calls were being recorded, emails were intercepted, and financial activities were identified and followed. There was no way of escaping. Despite this, they maintained their arrogance, believing that they had complete control over the situation. They didn't examine how easily they had gained what they believed was a clear path into your inner existence. They also didn't question how smoothly everything was moving. They were too consumed with their passion to notice the minute details like the pauses, cleverly phrased remarks, and little hesitations that were intended to keep them talking for a little longer. They were too consumed by their need to snoop, and so they proceeded to dig their own grave. They continued to move ahead, one frenzied appeal at a time, demanding more access or making further payments. They were unknowingly writing their own confession. This occurred every time they performed one of those things. The federal government did not need to pursue them since they were willingly putting themselves in danger by ignoring every piece of evidence that might have been used against them. They assumed they were doing business in stealth. They assumed they were still in control. But, in reality, they were nothing more than puppets in a performance that they had no idea was going place. When the final minute approached, they would be unable to exit the situation since time was running out. Leave a comment. They set the trap for me. However, they ended up causing their own destruction. Karma is a law that never fails to strike. They were not abruptly presented with the truth. Rather, it crept on them gradually and suffocatingly, like if a noose was tightening around their neck. At first, it was only a sense, a flicker of concern, a pause when they checked their messages and discovered that the hacker they thought they had hired had not answered to any of them. On the other side, the feeling became more intense. It roared against them, and suddenly, as if a freight train had crashed into their chest, the reality of the situation struck them. They can no longer hide behind bogus accounts and engage in illegal commercial activities since they have been apprehended. No more manipulations or illusions of control. Their previously held authority had been stripped away in an instant, leaving them exposed, defenseless, and absolutely impotent on the outside. The evidence was undeniable. It includes money transactions, taped conversations, and digital traces that directly linked them to the crimes they committed. After playing right into the hands of the feds, there was no getting out of the predicament at this point. There were a few who tried to deny it. They stutteringly responded, "This is an error." Their voices were trembling with terror. Despite their claims that they had nothing to do with it and that it was all a setup, the agents continued to behave as if nothing had occurred. There was no room for compromise, and there was no way to amend the tale. It was already too late to leave the fortifications. Others sought to depart, hastily deleting their data, traces, and wiping their devices clean. However, it was already too late. Hard disks had been copied. Transactions could be tracked back to their respective accounts, and every frantic click and tape was recorded. The federal government provided everything you may need. When they thought they could outwit the system, they discovered they had already lost. Those who should have known better, those who saw there was no way out, they remained silent while the world around them collapsed. They sat there in shock. Their deceptive empire had crumbled, leaving behind a cautionary story of hubris and self-destruction. There was no longer any control, nor was there any more secret information. Those who had before dismissed the repercussions of their acts and felt themselves to be untouchable were now being held accountable. What they had done in the shadows was now on plain display for everyone to see. The saddest aspect was that no one was left to help them. They had the feeling that they were playing a game of control, that they were the ones moving the pieces about the board. They didn't realize, however, that they had no influence over the game. Rather, you controlled it from the moment they decided to snoop, hack, and influence. They placed themselves in a position to be annihilated. The energy they used attempting to shatter you only helped to break them, demonstrating that the cosmos does not tolerate injustice for long. They had spent years escaping responsibility and spinning falsehoods so intricately that even they came to believe them. They felt that they were indestructible, untouchable, and immune to the repercussions of their decisions. However, they neglected to consider your presence, toughness, and resistance to surrender to their games. You were never just a target. Instead, you were the key to their visibility. The last domino fell, bringing their whole plot to an abrupt end. Every step they made to get into your life was one step closer to their destruction. Each frantic effort they made to retake control drew them further into the trap they had unintentionally created for themselves. Their goal to demolish you turned out to be the very thing that caused their own destruction. There was more than simply the federal government keeping track of things. It was something beyond their reach. Despite the fact that mankind played dirty, the cosmos is fair. All of the things they conspired against you, what they murmured in private and what they did behind closed doors, came back to haunt them, magnifying and concealing the same lies that they told, the traps that they laid, and the destruction that they attempted to orchestrate became the very things that sealed their fate. They believed they were untouchable since they had gotten away with everything for so long. They moved through life like ghosts, causing havoc and leaving without calling notice to themselves. However, this time they selected the incorrect individual to attack since they were unable to absorb your light. They ultimately destroyed themselves in the course of striving to do so. They felt they could manipulate the reality and the tale to suit their objective. However, there was no way to avoid it. The moment the balances of divine justice started to tilt, no amount of deception, manipulation, or power maneuvers would protect them from the repercussions. In the end, they were only pawns in their own doom. Despite the fact that they had spent their whole lives preying on others and believing that they were beyond the laws of the world. And now? So now they are the ones being monitored. They are the ones that live in terror, always looking over their shoulders, wondering when the next wave of repercussions would arrive. As they get smitten with you, the paranoia that had earlier gripped them has now shifted inward. When they receive a phone call, a knock on the door, or an unexpected email, they cringe because they know karma is still working to collect the consequences of their acts. Those who were selected were spared the necessity to fight in this struggle since it had already been won. As of now, there is no way to reverse or remove what has been done. When it comes to narcissistic individuals, power is more than just control. Rather, it focuses on perception. They meticulously craft their image, building a web of illusions to make the world believe they are unstoppable, impenetrable, and always one step ahead of the competitors. Nevertheless, that image is now irreparable, shattered, and beyond repair. Initially, just a few individuals raised their eyebrows and conversed quietly behind closed doors. However, over time, the truth spread like wildfire. Their name used to be associated with adoration or dread, but it is now linked with disgrace. Individuals who had previously showered them with plaudits, those who aided them, sycophants, and those who clung to their every word have all suddenly gone mute. A sinking ship is not something anybody wants to be associated with. Former colleagues are distancing themselves from one another by deleting old images and eliminating any references to their joint experience. They claim I had no notion. And they are correct. I was never really close to them. The same people who were formerly on their side are suddenly behaving as if they never existed. For the first time, the fall from grace has both legal and social consequences. And for a narcissist, this is the ideal punishment. The story spreads swiftly, and social media platforms are inundated with rumors, receipts, and irrefutable proof. They used the internet to create and control the narrative, but now it is exposing them in real time. Screenshots are being shared online, and audio recordings are being collected. Furthermore, the most tragic fact is that they are unable to stop it. Every effort to deny perverting the story or to play the victim just adds fuel to the fire. No one believes their falsehoods anymore. The people in the neighborhood who were formerly terrified of them are now laughing at them. These are the folks they ridiculed, tortured, and tried to control while watching the performance. They are viewing it with satisfaction. It's not only about being locked up. Sometimes justice is coming to the gradual and horrible realization that the world sees you for exactly who you are, and the humiliation does not stop there. They feel humiliated by their family. Their inner circle has vanished. The invitations are drying up. Doors are shutting and possibilities are dwindling. Job offers are rescinded and business transactions are annulled. Previously, it was a tool for opening doors. Their name is now recognized as a warning symbol. They spend years striving to regulate how others view them. However, they now have no influence over it. Not only has their reputation suffered, but it has been entirely shattered, and they are powerless to repair it. They are powerless to change history. They are unable to silence the internet. They can't make people forget to forget. They used to thrive on recognition, admiration, and the illusion of authority. But today, when someone looks at them, all they perceive is shame. They used to thrive and prosper on these things. Furthermore, that stain will follow them for the rest of their life, no matter where they go or how hard they try to avoid it. They're no longer relevant. They have been exposed, and they will never recover from this ordeal. This is their greatest dread coming reality. Even if the empire crumbles, their paranoia persists. They continue to remain fascinated. They continue to be desperate. They continue to hunt for a means to restore control. They are scrambling, trying to hold on to whatever shards of authority they feel they can keep by whatever means necessary. Nevertheless, this is the fact. They are unwilling to embrace you. You're now untouchable. They sought to enter your digital environment using forged accounts, concealed malware, and other means. They tried every option available to them. They are left with nothing but dead ends. Each time they think they've found a way through a hole in the wall. However, they remain unsuccessful. The same tactics that were previously so effective now fail to function in an astonishing way. Because this isn't just about technology. Instead, it is about something more important. They don't understand why it's happening or how to explain it. They fail to achieve any of their goals. Every effort to spy on, follow, or control them is met by an unseen force that prohibits it from happening. They thought they could play the part of the puppeteer, but now they will be the ones to perform. Their paranoia has worked against them in a bad manner. They are pursuing ghosts of a power they no longer have, and they perceive shadows where none exist. They are now the ones searching for prey. They were eager to use the hacker, but they are now unable to find them. The claimed buddy, who they expected to burst down the barricades for them, has fled like a ghost, leaving no trace behind. Every lead is gone. Every link is severed. The further they probe, the more difficult it gets. It's as if the cosmos has stepped in and barred every conceivable path back to you. They do not understand why they are unable to connect with you, nor why their access has been permanently withdrawn. But you are no longer a part of their universe. You no longer rely on their games, manipulation, or obsession. None of anything matters anymore outside their grip, their trickery, and the chaos in which they thrive. You have made considerable progress while remaining protected, shielded, and untouchable. They are now being monitored. Their gadgets are being watched. Their accounts are being tracked. Their every step is being examined. The federal government has taken the effort to place them under observation, when before they were the ones lurking in the shadows. They are now the ones being exposed to light. They are caught in a game that they will never win. The farther they go into it, the more they damage themselves. And you don't even have to make an effort to achieve anything. It was never only about hacking. It was never only about monitoring, manipulation, or control. It was never just about what occurred. The fight was an ongoing war of energy, karma, and divine justice. This was spiritual battle. They believed they were running their business in total privacy and that their actions would never be used against them. However, the universe never forgets. The balances must always be in equilibrium. And when you proceed with noble intentions and divine protection, no enemy, no matter how dishonest or relentless, will be able to succeed against you. They believed they could steal what was not theirs, including your authority, privacy, and peace. Despite their belief that they were immune to the repercussions of their acts, they schemed, planned, and maneuvered. However, the rules of the universe do not change for narcissists. Each of the acts they took against you is a thread in the web that eventually lead to their own downfall. However, they did not fight you. Rather, they were battling something much more powerful, something they had no chance of defeating. Karma has finally come, and it bears the face of justice before it. They sought to play God, rewriting reality in their favor and twisting destiny to suit their purposes. But now they are the ones being tried in the court of divine order, with the expectation of being convicted.